What's the loneliest thing you've ever done or seen someone do? I knew an old lady on my street who would regularly call the police for non-existent disturbances after her husband passed away, just so she could have somebody to talk to for a little while. After the officers realized what was happening, a lot of them began to stop by her house after their shifts to have tea and chat with her so that she would stop dialing 911. Glad this story had a happy ending. But then she died. My friend worked at a McDonald's. He told me a story about a guy who came in every day and always ordered the same thing. 2 double quarter pounders for me and 2 to go for my wife. He would get his food, then sit by himself and eat his sandwiches. Then he would get up, say goodbye and leave. They could see him as he left, went to his car, sat in the driver's seat, and ate the other 2. I always feel a bit sad when I think about this story. Similar story when I worked at Wendy's. A guy and his little old mother would come in every day and order the same thing. One day he comes in by himself and orders the same thing, but she's not with him. He just sat there and didn't eat at all. He did this every day for weeks. Eventually I quit because it was a summer job, but he was there on my last day. My mother is currently in a hospice with the terrible combination of terminal cancer, COPD, and mid-grade dementia. Every time I've gone to see her, she has been sitting outside of the front doors in her walker. I always ask her how long she has been outside, and she tells me that she has been there for less than 5 minutes or so. The last time I went to see her, she was sitting outside again, and I decided for some reason to see how long she would stay outside, as I had heard that she was becoming very disassociated from everyone and everything at her hospice. I sat on some steps about a half a block away and watched her sit there for over 45 minutes, not making a single move. She was just staring forward as if she were paralyzed. I sat there and cried, devastated that this is how my mother's life is going to end. When I finally approached her, I asked her how long she had been outside for. She said about 5 minutes. I broke down again, hugged her, and took her back inside. She barely remembers me, and all she wants to talk about in her lucid moments is how much she misses my stepdad who died 15 years ago. It just absolutely breaks my heart that she lived with that for 15 years and that it's all she can think about when she is aware. I'm not sure if this will be buried or not, and I'm sure you've all heard it before, but please do not take the people in your life for granted. All it takes sometimes is for you just to be there. Just to let someone know that they aren't alone. Growing up, my family was never big on celebrating me or my brother's birthday. One year they had obviously forgotten until well into the day. If for some reason we had one of those candles that played happy birthday, never used, so I took it to my room and played it and cried myself to sleep. I delivered to an old guy who ordered pizza once, and he invited me in and offered me said pizza. For context, he was no creeper, just an obviously lonely old guy who probably never got any company at his old apartment. It was a slow night, so I actually stayed around and just talked to him for a long time, but I didn't take any pizza. The guy told me all about his life, the war, his family across the country. He told me all about his grandson, who he said I reminded him of, and he asked me how I liked my job because he said his grandson needed a summer job. He was super excited that his family was coming to see him. The idea that the guy would order a pizza, pay for that, and then invite in the stranger who brought it to eat, it makes it stick out as the loneliest thing I've seen. But it wasn't an awful experience by any means. The guy had a really neat life story, and it was a welcome break from my job. When I finally left, he thanked me profusely for listening, and it made a huge difference in my attitude, actually doing something meaningful to someone, and not just bringing crappy food to misers for an easy buck. Did you ever see him again? No, and to be honest, it always surprised me. There were actually a few guys in my time like him, but always different, and I never saw them again. I'd remember if I did. The shut-in type usually order frequently, but sadly the nice ones were never repeat customers. Maybe because his family is with him now and is now cooking, so there's no need to order pizza that much. Either that or he's dead. When I was a teenager, I worked at a Chinese buffet and restaurant. There was this woman in her early 30s who would come in almost every evening. She would eat a giant plate of food, go to the bathroom, repeat. She would do this about 2 to 3 times every visit. Bulimia. She always came alone, sat alone at her booth, never really talked to anyone, but she was very nice, soft spoken. I always wondered what happened to her after I quit. About a decade later, I started working at a large hospital in my hometown, and there is this woman in my department who looks so familiar. She's quiet, polite, doesn't really socialize with anyone. One day, when I pulled up for work in the parking garage, I saw her sitting in her van next to my car. She didn't see me. She was power eating a large container of some sort of food product. I got out of my car and went down to the department. She entered a couple minutes later, surprised I was so early, and went straight to the bathroom. After coming out, she told me she was going to go up to the cafeteria and grab some breakfast, as she was starving. It was the same woman. I realized where I recognized her from. Over a decade later, and she was still in the grips of her condition, it seemed. Working with her, I got to know her a little bit. She was single, never married. She had 3 cats. In the evenings after work she liked to put together puzzles at home. She would sometimes comment on her lack of a relationship, saying she just didn't really know how to meet anyone. I started to think, from the way she talked, that she might have never had a boyfriend. When one of her cats died, she took a week off work to mourn. They were her best friends. I always felt this overpowering sense of loneliness and shame about her. Having an eating disorder for so long, I have no doubt that that kind of lifestyle would isolate someone from those around them. Everyone in the department had caught on, but no one ever said anything. I always feel sad when I think of her. Always alone. I hope one day she gets help. I had a friend who used to play Wii games by herself because her roommates didn't like her and she had no one to play with. Player 1 was her right hand and player 2 was her left. I had no friends in 4th grade. My family had moved from a different country back to the USA a couple years prior, and then homeschooled me for a year, and done a terrible job of it. So I basically, when I entered public school I had not readjusted to American culture at all, on top of already being an insanely shy and awkward little girl. For the whole school year I played by myself at recess, and was weirdly quiet. My only friend was my little beanie baby toy, Snip, the Siamese cat. So by the end of the year, when yearbooks came out, I had no one to sign mine. I remember watching everyone walking around signing each other's, and me just sitting there as they passed by. Of course I wanted signatures too, so I did the only thing I knew and wrote, "Have a great summer, Snip." Another little girl must have felt bad for me and did eventually ask to sign my yearbook, saw the signature, and asked about it. I must have been the shade of a lobster while explaining it. This elderly man eating it in and out with a picture of his wife. Holy shit. The idea of losing someone to death after a lifetime together just fully hit me for the first time. Duck, duck, duck. My girlfriend of 4 years died in an accident a couple years back. I have since learned to cope with it all. However, this was not the case at first. The first few weeks after she died I would lay her picture on my pillow and hold conversations with her for hours at a time. I would put pillows under the blankets in the shape of a body and pretend she was actually laying there. I would fall asleep holding the pillows in a death grip / cuddle. This was the mild stuff. I created a Facebook page for her that I didn't tell anyone about, and I would message myself from it, holding conversations with myself from both of our perspectives. Some of the stuff I said was really ducked up. Looking back at it now, I would go out to places we'd like to eat at and order food for 2, leaving her food on the other side of the table and even holding conversations as though she was sitting there. People would be pretty weirded out. The worst thing that I did, which really should be kept to myself but duck it, was sex related. I would only try to duck women who looked like her, and on 2 occasions I actually moaned her name out loud during sex with one of these women. She knew how ducked up I was with it all, and actually went along with it. She would pretend to be my former girlfriend, and say things like, "I never left. I'm still here to duck your cock," and a lot of much more ducked up shit. Pretty sure she might have had some demons of her own. Looking back on it all, she even let me duck her as she lay limp one time, pretending to be my actual dead girlfriend. I cut things off after that, realizing how ducked it all was. Loneliness can duck your brain up, man. Worked at a flower shop a few years ago. Couple of old men broke my heart. First guy, Valentine's Day. He was looking at some of our flowers with a troubled look on his face and tears in his eyes. I approached and asked if there was anything I could help him find. He said, my wife died 5 years ago, but I always bought her flowers for Valentine's Day. I'm trying to find flowers to put on her grave, but now I can't remember what color she liked. He put his hand over his mouth and his voice cracked when he said the last part. He was tore up over not remembering. Second guy, I was taking an order for him over the phone. He wanted to send flowers to his wife's nursing home and didn't have any family to take him to visit her. At the end of the call he said, hey, do you live close? Do you like cats? I have cats that are so friendly and you would love them. I have some puzzles we can do too while we chat. You should come visit me sometime. Suawob. Made friends with my senior housemate and her friends my freshman year of college. Then had my entire circle of close friends graduate. I was stuck more or less friendless my sophomore year and was sad and lonely and bored. Ended up posting on the college Facebook page asking if anyone wanted to eat lunch with me. I cringed thinking about it. I've been in college for 5 years and I have absolutely no friends. Every semester I'm completely alone all day. I talk to no one. I eat lunch alone. I walk to class alone. For the first 2 years it was pretty depressing, but after that I convinced myself that college is for education and not socializing. I'm not going to my graduation ceremony because I will not know a single person in my graduating class and I will not have any friends to take pictures with. Donate blood to get free movie tickets by myself. I use said movie tickets to go watch movies by myself. I take very long, lonely walks / drive / bike rides at midnight. In high school, I hid in the bathroom to eat lunch, or during PE, if bathrooms were closed, I would hide out behind the school and eat next to the dumpster. If anyone saw me there, God forbid, I quickly dump my food in the dumpster, so they don't know my secret. I was walking by my neighbor's house years ago. I see her, 70 plus years old, sitting at the kitchen table talking with someone. I thought maybe her son came to visit, as her husband died a month before. As I continue walking, I see the seat opposite here. It's empty. She's there still talking to her husband. It broke my heart. Maladaptive daydreaming every second I'm alone. When I'm driving I'm speaking to my girlfriend, or on the Tonight Show talking about my newest stand-up show. I'm speaking at a bookshop in Norway, in Norwegian, about my best-selling novel which is being made into a feature film. I'm daydreaming when I walk to class, when I drift off to sleep. It's how I cope. A teacher from my school, unmarried, no kids, would regularly go to Disneyland by himself. In theory, it sounds fun, but it makes me sad imagining a middle-aged guy waiting in line for churros and riding rides alone. I'm generally a loner and it hit me when I was bored at home and my 2 friends were on their double dates with their girlfriends. I drove my car at night, since I couldn't sleep, got a burger, and parked in an empty parking lot playing music and eating. Felt alone. Funny thing is I do this regularly but it never registered. I'm used to it doing loner things. Eat alone, drink, movies, etc.